right, well, it's 11:02, so we're going to get started. So very excited to have Justin here. This is Justin Lapiska. Justin brings a fairly unique perspective, I would say, because he built an entire foundation in construction before even ever selling a home. He spent 10 years doing that. And obviously that background gave him a good understanding of how homes are built, systems, how they work, and how to evaluate property beyond what just most of us see. Within our office, he's always leaning into growth and leadership. He previously served as the team leader for the Market Center, and he's currently serving on the Agent Leadership Council, the ALC, this year. And leadership has always been something that's, deep in his blood. His commitment to learning is also very evident in the training that he puts himself, the rooms he puts himself into. He's attended family reunion, I think, 8 times, right? 9, 8?
Yeah. Bull and family reunion, I've lost track of each of them.
And he continues to invest in his development, and I'm super proud to say he recently hired a MAPS coach when he was at family reunion. And then from a production standpoint, he's built a consistently strong business. He regularly closes more than 20 transactions per year. And in fact, 2024 and 2025 were 2 of his best years yet in terms of closed volume. So it just shows that focus on growth and education and accountability, which you'll hear about, really translates into his results. So just a great example. His story is going to be a great example of someone who commits to continual learning and what that can do for you. So without further ado, ready?
Yeah.
All right. So Justin, tell me a little bit about your childhood. What did that look like? Where did you grow up? Those kind of things.
I grew up in Mars, Pennsylvania, about 20 miles north of Pittsburgh. It was farm country when I grew up there. It's now multi-million-dollar homes. Actually, the average price point in Adams Township, the township I grew up in, last year was $824,000. Which is that's the average, right? Which also means there's old farmhouses for $150,000. Right? So to have an average price point of that. So it was cows, it was corn, it was horses, and now they've all sold because nobody wants to run them.
Right.
I'd say, I grew up pretty lucky. I had 2 loving parents, 2 brothers. Just got done skiing with my brother's birthdays today, so I just was in Vermont with him over the weekend. We all remain close. We live in Harrisburg, New York City, and Minneapolis, but we all stay pretty close. I would say the biggest thing that shaped my life as a kid, at 12 years old, my dad was a medical photographer. He worked for the hospital. He would document surgeries and things like that, right? This is the 80s, in the early 90s, and at 12 years old, technology caught up, and my dad lost his job. They could pay somebody a lot less money than they were paying my dad. They'd have an intern come in. We now had cameras. A person didn't have to be in the room. We still weren't at digital age yet, but my dad, we had a dark room in my basement where my dad was developing photos that he took from work. And they paid him pretty well, especially for that time period. He was paid well, but that also meant that the company at some point said, this is not sustainable to us. And so at 12 years old, my dad lost his job. My mom worked in a lab for the hospital, working nights, so that way she could be home with us during the day. He was working during the day. So they were making sacrifices for us, but at that point when he lost his job, I watched my mom go back to school. She went to Slippery Rock University, got a teaching degree, and became an elementary school teacher. And through that time period, my parents, I didn't feel it as much as a kid, right? They still took us on vacations. I don't know how they did any of it. They had to be pretty strapped at that time. But I knew from 12 years old that I would own my own business because I would never have somebody tell me what my worth was, and they couldn't fire me in the drop of a hat. So at 12 years old, and I wrote a paper, I got a C on it, because they said I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I said, well, what 12-year-old knows exactly what they want? So I was argumentative at 12 as well.
That's great. Okay, so you grew up understanding that and kind of set that goal for yourself. What's something else interesting about growing up? Did you have any kind of jobs.
Yeah, I worked for the Pittsburgh Steelers, visiting team clubhouse. So my dad and his four brothers grew up on the north side of Pittsburgh. The Rooneys were one of their neighbors.
That's
The
great.
Rooneys this goes back to when the Rooneys were not that wealthy, though. I'm sure they had the nicest house on the street. But my grandfather tells old stories about like the 50s and Art Sr. and my grandfather telling him how bad an investment he was making as the Steelers were losing money constantly. Right now it's a $1 billion organization. So Andy was wrong. But they hired kids from the neighborhood, which was cool. Like Rogers Freivogel was a kid from the neighborhood. He was the Steelers equipment manager for 30 years. My uncle, who's a physical therapist, was hired to run the visiting team clubhouse. So he hired me and my brothers and nephews and kind of kept in the family. So when I was a little kid, before I was old enough to work, they would sneak me in through the locker room after the players went to the field. I would go up to stand on the seats with my dad and see all the games.
That's awesome.
And I worked for the Steelers for probably like 8 or 10 years. Got to go to a Super Bowl, so I saw the Steelers win the Super Bowl.
Cool. Right. So tell me a little bit more. I mean, you had that job. At that point in time, how long did you do that job for?
I think I was 15 when I started, and I did it through college and then through my next year before I left.
Okay. So tell me about college. Where did you go to college at?
I went to Penn State. I played baseball at Penn State Altoona for a year, and then after that, I spent 3 more years there. Fun fact about me, I went to 4 years of college, and my parents were coming up for graduation, and my counselor called me and he said, so you are 3.5 credits shy of graduating. And I was like, how is that possible? I had more than enough credits. I was missing 3.5 specific Gen Ed credits outside the major that I never took. And I said, okay. I said, how did you miss this? Right? We're like, this is 2 weeks before something. Like, how did you miss? I blamed him, right? But this is probably my fault too, because I probably didn't pay attention. And so I had a choice. I could go take a class, 2 classes. I would have taken 2 classes because they were all credit classes mostly. And I chose not to.
Ooh.
So they never sent me my diploma.
Ooh.
Technically not a graduate of Penn State. They do ask me for money every year.
What was your major at Penn State?
I majored in film and video. So my brother's a filmmaker in New York City. I thought actually what I wanted to do was work for NFL Films. NFL Films was like the best filmmaking in sports. And I would meet these guys on the sidelines because they're on the sidelines shooting. They shot on real film back then too, which was cool. So I was learning how to edit. I was learning how to shoot. I was learning some script writing. I enjoyed all of that. But then I found out that NFL Films, nobody ever leaves. So while they will give you an internship, they have no room to hire you. They're also located in a dump of a town in New Jersey, which seemed like a bad place to live. So back then, this is 2004 when I'm coming out of college. New York and LA were really still your only options in film. The world wasn't digital. The world wasn't connected where you could shoot anywhere and have access to resources. So I came out of college having no idea what I was going to do, right? I kind of knew that film and video wasn't going to be what I was going to do. I probably ended up in it because my brother was doing it and I didn't know what I wanted to do myself. Honestly, college probably wasn't even my best route. I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I knew I was going to own my own business, but there was no direction of that 25 years ago. And there wasn't the speakers and the books and the podcasts and all of these things that could fill your mind with those ideas. So I took the traditional route of what a pretty good student in high school, a good athlete in high school, like the next was always just college. So I went to university just to go, more than having a direction of why I was going.
So you graduated, realized that film probably wasn't the thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
What happened next?
I moved back home into mom and dad's house. I didn't have a job. I started to work some construction for a best friend of mine's brother-in-law owned a construction company. We were doing renovations additions, basements, that type of stuff. And I think I drove him nuts. Donnie's still one of my best friends today after working for him. I also thought he was old. And now I think about that, and I was like 22. I was working for him. So I couldn't believe how much he was capable of at that age. Now that I think back on that, but I just asked questions every day. It was never go. If he said go do this, I always said why, right? And he hated it. He was like, you are killing me. Like, we have work to do, and you're constantly asking questions. But after 6 months of asking him questions, I knew what the next thing to do was without him having. Right, I was inquisitive enough to learn how to do it. But this didn't last long. I probably worked for him for 2 years, and about 18 months in, I remember being at his house, and I had dinner at his house like 4 nights a week. I lived with my parents. He had little kids. I would go shoot with his kid driveway when we came home while he talked to his wife. So his family became my family, and his wife cooked me dinner most nights of the week. So I'm over his house on like a Friday or Saturday. We're having a bonfire and a few drinks and hanging out with kids. And I just said to him, so I need you to expand. And he said, what do you mean? I said, look, there's not enough money or enough work on what we're doing. I want to run a crew. I want to learn to estimate. Let's grow your business because you don't pay me enough money. And he said, I'm not interested in growing your business. I'm happy with where it is. And I said, okay, no, I probably won't be here for you. And so at that time, a friend of mine from high school, she had gotten married. She met a guy on spring break in Myrtle Beach, got married, and I only knew him from their wedding, so not really at all. It was Christmas time. He was in town. We were, as a 24-year-old, you're at the bar at Christmas time, catching up with your old friends from high school, everybody that came into town. So me and him just were sitting in a booth talking. Brian is an incredible person. He grew up with affirmations before I knew what affirmations were. His parents used to leave notes next to his bed telling him that he could do anything he put his mind to. So imagine this young kid growing up. He's my age, maybe a year or two older than me. I'm 44 years old. So we grew up through the 80s and 90s, and he had parents that were constantly telling him that anything was possible. And so me and him were just talking, and he's like, wow. He's like, so what are you going to do next? I was like, I don't know. I just know I'm going to own a business. I don't know what it's going to be. And he said, great. I'm a realtor in Myrtle Beach. And at this time, probably 2006-ish, HGTV and Flip That House and all these things are huge. And he's like, come down, move to Myrtle Beach. We'll start flipping houses. I've never even been there. I said, all right, let me think about it. I called him just after New Year's. I said, I'll be there in 6 months. I was there. I gave Donnie 4 months notice. I'm done working for you. I'm moving to Myrtle Beach. Here's what I'm doing. I went and bought a new F-150. By the way, you buy an F-150, $50,000 now. So I bought a new truck. I loaded up all my tools, and I called. I said, do you have somewhere for me to live? He said, I do. I have a rental property on a golf course that's coming vacant. You can rent it.
Whatever.
So I moved to, and I'm a big golfer, so that was easy. So I moved to a place I'd never been, and I knew nobody. I knew Brian, his wife, and my friend from high school and college, who was his wife's younger brother, who graduated with me, had also moved to Myrtle Beach at the time. So me and him ended up leasing this apartment from Brian. Brian and I started flipping houses. I thought I was going to get my real estate license when I moved to Myrtle Beach, actually. That was like in my mind. I'll probably get my real estate license because that's what Brian did. It just never materialized that way. I didn't need it necessarily. Brian had the license. And throughout that time period, though, I became friends with him, other realtors in the area. And every realtor that I met owned a brokerage, super successful, top 1%. So I thought every realtor was rich. So I was like, oh, this business looks pretty awesome.
That's what everybody thinks.
But never got my license at that time, right? Just never got my license at that. Then things changed. Anybody that was in business in 2009, 2010, were just old enough to have financial responsibilities at that time period. The world changed, and it changed quickly. Markets crashed. We lived in Myrtle Beach being a secondary market, so to speak, right? A lot of people owned homes there that lived in New Jersey, lived in New York, lived in Pennsylvania. It was a vacation rental spot. So as people are losing all of their retirement, as home prices, everybody's underwater, and you have two homes, what's the first one you lose? You lose your beach house. So we had 7 properties at the time that we used as rentals. We bought 4 lots on the Intercoastal Waterway. One of them had a home on it, had a shack on it. The other 3 were vacant. It was on the wrong side of the Intercoastal Waterway, so if any of you know the Grand Strand area, Conway is like the only bridge that crosses the Intercoastal Waterway. All the way down here is Murrells Inlet. Right across the water from Murrells Inlet was Bucksport. We bought 4 lots in Bucksport. We renovated one of them. We built a 300-foot walkway to a deep water dock. I still remember the cost. It cost $80,000 to build that walkway to a deep water dock. We bought all of these 4 lots combined for like $500,000, including the one with the house on it that we built 2 additions on, renovated. We were going to sell it for 1.2. Would have been profitable immediately with 3. The reason why we bought these, it was a Murrells Inlet from the house to Murrells Inlet where all the restaurants, shops, access to the ocean was with your boat. 5 minutes by boat, hour and a half by boat. The state was going to build a bridge, and we speculated on this, and we made a decision on speculation, which the lesson is, be careful speculating. The market crashed in 09 and 010, and the state didn't have the money to build the bridge, so they never built the bridge. So our properties were not worth much. We refinanced. We held that property that we renovated. We eventually sold it for $500,000, which was break even on everything. Actually a loss after you look at our expenses. And we still own those 3 other lots, actually. The only 3 things I still own are Myrtle Beach. We still own these 3 lots. They're not worth anything at the moment. Maybe one day they will be, but right now we don't have any reason to sell them because they're not worth anything. But the 7 properties that we owned, they were all owned through private money. All of those people were losing their shirts as well. They called on all of our loans. We could not pay off all of these loans. So we had to sell these properties. These properties were worth 75% less within 30 days of our lease. We lost in the ballpark of $3.1 million in equity, and we were broke, right? And I just got married. So we were broke. We didn't have any assets left, and we had to get creative. And we got pretty creative. We would, I'd say it probably helped the beginning of my real estate career because there was these 3 towers, and they were these condos, and the condos were set up in a way that the furnishings, the TVs, the appliances all had to be the same. They were regulated by the HOA because it operated like a hotel. So they were individually owned units, but it was leased like a hotel was leased. It had a main front desk. Owners of these properties didn't really have to do anything. They just collected checks every month. Well, these people all started foreclosing. And so as they were foreclosing, they lived in Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. I would get the list on Friday of who's foreclosing. There would be auctions on Monday, and I would call everybody on that list. And I would say, hey, you're being foreclosed on. You can imagine how that conversation goes. Some of it is F you, whether you know. And I'd say, look, here's the thing. You're losing your place on Monday, but here's what you don't realize. You own all of the contents of this building. Everything inside of it you still own for the next 72 hours. I will wire you $5,000 to take all of your machines. We would wire them $5,000, the few that, now, know this, let's say 20 are foreclosing, 1 or 2, right? I might get 1 or 2 to do this deal a month. And the next month we do it over. So your success rate's low. So we would purchase all of their things, wire them the money. We had a crew that we would send in, take everything out, we'd store it in a warehouse, we'd sell at auction on Monday. 30 days later it would close. We would call the new owner and say, hey, are you aware in your HOA bylaws you need to furnish the home with all of these certain contents? I happen to have everything you need. I'll sell it to you for $15,000 instead of $25 or whatever it costs, right?
Yeah.
So we'd make $5,000 to $10,000 on each property that we could get with a 30-day, $5,000 to $10,000 outlay of our own money, which was also, by the way, I was broke. It was not. And in that, right, our partners were me, Brian, who was the realtor, and we had a guy in mortgages. He lost his home in Merle's throughout this. This is how serious 2010 was. Luckily, he had kept the small rancher that was his first home as a rental, bought his big home in Merle's Inlet, beautiful house. He eventually lost it because we were leveraged against these things. And so as we were leveraged against these things, he lost that home. Luckily, he kept his other one, so we back into his half that, rancher that he started with. But we were doing anything we could, right? We were doing, our dates were a 6-pack and a Firehouse sub sandwich on the beach, right? Luckily, we lived a mile from the beach, so that made it cheap. But it was figure out anything we could do. But that led me to leaving South Carolina. I couldn't see starting over. I think if I would have got my real estate license there, we would have killed it there too. But my wife was from New York, I was from Pittsburgh, and it just kind of became a non-maybe.
I love how you talk about that, right? You faced that major adversity, right? The market shift, and you were literally able to adapt into something else to make things work, right? You were able to shift into a different, still real estate related, right? But you were able to shift into something else.
Yeah, 15 years ago, right? I'll be 45 this year, so I was 30 years old. And I saw my father-in-law lose $3.5 million in Citibank investments at an age where he's no longer working, at a physical ability where he no longer had the ability to go back to work. And so, and having somebody like Brian, right, who had grown up with affirmations and positive mindset, this is the person that gave me Rich Dad, Dad. This is like everybody that's ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad probably remembers who gave, right? And you'll listen to enough podcasts around real estate and they're like, what was the changing moment? Dave Hook and Matt Madden's changing moment in their decision to drop out of college and go into real estate. And Dave Hook runs the largest real estate team in our area. So having him and having that mindset of like, who cares? Get over it, right? You lost $3.2 million. Get over it. It's what are you gonna do? You can feel bad for yourself. We got drunk for a weekend, maybe a week, right? There was you can feel bad for yourself, and after feeling bad for yourself, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what am I gonna do? What's my next step?
So let's go into a little bit fun topic, right? I would ask you what you like to do for fun, but I think we all know what you like to do for fun. So, little caveat: if you don't know, probably in the next 2 weeks,
Maybe next 3 hours.
maybe the next 3 hours, you won't see Justin in here because Justin will be on the golf course.
Yeah, I will.
That's what Justin loves doing.
Kyle Evans, my coach, as we talked about schedules and we talked about things and we talked about expectations, there is one thing that's non-negotiable: Friday afternoon. It's non-negotiable. Friday afternoon, I play golf. Kyle said, "Great, we won't plan on Friday afternoons, right? We protect that, but that means you have to do all the other things.
Yep.
You have to do all the other things to have the freedom and opportunity to do that."
You just put it where- Okay. So moved back here, moved back to Harrisburg. Talk a little bit about getting your license here and kind of just what that looked like.
Yeah, so back up a step. About a year before I moved to Harrisburg, Patrick Smith, who owned this Keller Williams office at the time, his son had a house in Camp Hill. His son went to high school with my older brother. They were best friends, so I've known him since I was 4 years old. And he said, "Hey, I got this house in Camp Hill. Those of you that haven't been in this business this long won't believe it, but average days on market was somewhere in the ballpark of 100. Nothing sold. Everything was available. If you had buyers, you hated them because you had to show them 60 houses to make a decision. So all these houses are sitting. He called me. He said, "Hey, I need you to come renovate this house. I can't sell." And I was in Myrtle Beach. I said, "I'm too busy, man. I can't. A year later, he calls me and he's like, hey, I need you to renovate this house. He's moved to Philly. He's like, I can't sell it. And I was like, you still haven't sold this house. And so I said, well, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh for Thanksgiving, also going to be in Pittsburgh for Christmas. I can give you that window. Can I live in the house? He said, yeah, it's livable, but it needs some work. So I got there. He said, you'll meet my dad there. He'll give you some money to get started. I think we negotiated $1,000 a week in cash to me, and then they would pay for all material. So I showed up. Patrick Smith's cutting the grass in a full suit and tie outside of
If
the
you don't
home.
know
If you don't know
Patrick,
Patrick, this is on par.
Yeah.
So I meet him, gives me an envelope of cash with like $2,500 in it. He's like, get your first week and then use the rest for materials right now. We walked through the house. I said, okay, refinish your hardwood floors, new interior doors, paint the place, new kitchen countertops. We'll leave the cabinets be. I think we put a new front door in. So that's about the max I could get done in that window. We got it done. Patrick Smith Sr. called me on Christmas Day. And I said, hey, what's up? Merry Christmas. He said, that house sold. When are you coming back to Harrisburg? And I said, I have no plans to come back to Harrisburg. So January of that year, I think this is probably 2012, I'm sitting in Myrtle Beach, and I looked at my wife, and I said, nothing's going on. And we weren't big on raising a family there. We kind of liked the Northeast. We wanted to be back in the Northeast. So I said, maybe I'll go to Harrisburg and see what it's like. So I moved to Harrisburg for 6 months without her. She was a teacher. She finished out the school year. I lived in the buddy's house. I just sold that house again. So we got to tell that 1424 Market Street. So I lived in this house for a little while with him until Kelly moved up and we found a place to live. But I still didn't have a real estate license. Patrick was sending me work. We bought a property in Enola that we flipped. We were like doing a little bit here and there, but I was doing construction. And I had our first child in 2013. Parker was like 2 weeks old and I was holding her. And I just thought, I need to do something different. And real estate's been on my mind for going back to 06 probably. So 6 or 7 years it had been on my mind. I just had never went that route. So I called Patrick and I said, and I remember where I was sitting holding her, and I just said, I think I'm going to get a real estate class. So I called Patrick and I said, hey, I'm going to get my real estate license. He said, thank God, it's about time. And he was never going to push me into it, but he knew that it was the right spot for me. So I had a meeting here the next day. Rich Fino was the team lead at the time. This was a Thursday, I was in classes by Tuesday. And I was in classes in person in the basement of this building. Marley Weitzman, who used to be here, ran the class. And I think it took 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, I showed up here every day. Once I showed up here every day after that. I just said, okay, this is what we're doing. I probably did a couple odds and ends construction jobs for a little while. I do remember like taking notes on some drywall I was finishing as I was on the phone with a real estate customer. But sooner or later, I was like, look, you're either all in or you're not, right? Like, I can do this half-assed and I can do this half-assed. Or I can say, let's see what our full potential is and show up every day. So I used to sit back there. That was not as nice of a closet, but I used to go in that closet every day and make my calls. And I took bold. I just did what everybody. I just followed. Like, this is it. Go do what they're asking you to do. So I talked to 20 people a day, every day.
So there's a lesson in that. I mean, if you guys don't know it, right? The lesson is that he treated it like a full-time job. You were here every day.
Mm-hmm.
You put in the work, right? You made the calls. You did the lead generation. The things that we get taught, right? We hear it all the time. No, you have to lead gen, you have to lead gen, you have to lead gen, right? And we always come up with things to do that aren't lead genning, but the reality is that's the first thing that he did, and that's helped get him to where he's at today.
I didn't know anybody either, right? So I didn't know what lead gen was at that time. By the way, you guys that are coming into the business, you should be incredibly grateful for what this office has grown into. We did not have much training. We had a bunch of veteran agents that said leave, right? We had a bunch of like, I'm busy, I don't have time. So I came in, Adrian, being a friend somewhat at the time, through his cousin, whose house was the house in Camp Hill. I would sit back there and Adrian would come sit back there with me. And I didn't know what I was doing. I said, well, what do I do? He said, you have to lead gen. I said, I don't know what that means. He said, well, call everybody that you know in the area, ask them who they may know that's looking to buy or sell a home. So I called my college roommate, his sister, her husband, my cousin, and her fiance. And I was like, 5 minutes later, I was back. I was like, all right. I called everybody, right? My database at that time fit on one sheet of paper, one sheet. And I said, what do I do now? And he said, well, if you don't have other people, you need to find people. So I thought, okay, how do I find people? I was fortunate that Bold was coming to the area. I think the first time ever Bold came to the area. And Patrick said, I think you really should take Bold. I think it would benefit you. And I said, great. I do not have $800 to spend on Bold, right? Like I don't have it. I have a new baby at home. Like I do not have $800 that I can spend. And he said, great, I'll pay it for you. And you'll pay it back through transactions after. And that's kind of how we set up the payback system, I think, because I didn't have the money to do it. And so I think I paid him back $100 a deal for my next 8 years to pay back the $800 that I had to pay. And I went into Bold, and they gave me options. Here's buckets of lead generation opportunities you could do. For sale by owner stuck out to me because they already wanted to sell their house, so I could get somebody that was going to quickly ready to go to the market. And they were advertising their own information. So I didn't have to pay for information. I didn't have to pay for leads. I would drive around. I would ride I did a lot of triathlons when I lived in Myrtle Beach. So when I moved here, I was still riding my bike a lot. And so I would just take my phone and I would ride my bike and I'd come across a for sale by owner. I'd take a picture of their sign with their number on it. I'd take a picture of their house. And they were on my list for my lead gen the next day. They were on my list of who am I calling. And Bold gave me the scripts. Bold gave me the conversations that I should be having with these people. And so right from the very beginning, lead gen and script practice, role play was the cornerstones and the foundation of what my business was. On top of that, I had to make 20 contacts a day in Bold. And so I would just find an agent who had a listing. They sat out in the market forever anyway. So I said, hey, do you mind if I call around your listing? And then I got Land Voice for free at the time through Bold. So during the window of Bold, I had Land Voice for free. So I could use that, I'd put in an address, give me the 50 closest houses to this phone. And I would call every person and then I would just circle prospect. Right now it was very low. I was doing a lot of work and not seeing a whole lot on the back because I didn't have a database. So you can imagine calling 50 houses around there where everything that's for sale is not selling anyway and saying, hey, your neighbor's house is for sale. Do you know of anybody that's looking to buy and move into the neighborhood, right? But my goal was to have 20 conversations a day because I had to have 100 conversations a week, right? And not everybody answered their phone, right? So back then, I think I was on about 4 dials to 1 to get somebody on the phone. So to talk to 100 people a week, dial the phone 400 times now. And I did it for 8 weeks. And out of that, opportunities start to pop up, right? So now, as those of you that have databases or grew up here, and Stephanie and I work on this a lot, it's a much better conversation of talking to people that we know that can refer us business, but I didn't have that luxury. So I just had to build a database from the ground up. And my database became past clients slowly over time. People I talked to that didn't actually do anything at that time, but I was able to start to build a relationship with them. They took my phone. If you answered my phone, you didn't want to know you were getting another call, right? Like in circle prospecting, if you picked up the phone and said hello, you would hear from Justin again. You immediately became part of my database.
So you built your database off of going out having conversations with people. So those 20 conversations you have a day.
Mm-hmm.
I recall a story you told me once about the clicker.
The clicker. So
the clicker.
There's one on my desk. It's just a simple counter, right? I walked around with it in my pocket at all times. If I would make my calls, and let's say I talked to 14 people that morning during my lead gen, and then I moved on to my lead follow-up, and I moved on to other things. And so as I did all of that, I would be about to leave, and I would see my clicker. Is it 14? Is it 16? It had to be at 20, because every time I had to conversation about real estate with another person. I clicked. And it was great. It was an affirmation. Drew Richmond is actually the gave to now is the CEO of Drew, or of the Dave Home Group. At the time, she was an agent burnout struggling, right? But she was like, here, use this clicker. It's going to help you through this. And so I started to do it. So if I now went to the grocery store to pick up food on the way home, I knew I had 4 conversations then. You bet I asked the person. I did not go to self-checkout. I went and got checked out. I talked to the person in line behind me. I talked to the person checking out my food, right? Like that was, I had, the goal was, I didn't care what the outcome was, right? I didn't care if you told me to F off and hung up on me. I cared that you answered your phone or had a conversation with me, because that was the goal. That was the only goal. The rest of it will come from just being disciplined enough.
Right, because you mentioned earlier the 4 to 1, right? You had
Yeah.
to have 4 conversations to get someone to answer the phone, right? So in reality, you needed to dial the phone 4 times.
For everyone, so 80
For everyone.
times a day.
Mhm.
80 times a day,
Right.
right? The phone was dialed 80 times a day. And if it wasn't dialed 80 times a day, it was dialed 62, I was short. I was talking to somebody in the grocery store. I couldn't go home, right? The choice was not go home. The choice was, before I go home, all right, I'm leaving the office. Where am I talking to 4 more people?
You were very intentional and took it seriously.
Yeah. I also believed that I would get kicked out of Bold, right? If I got kicked out of Bold, I owe $800 for something I didn't even complete, right? If I got 3 files or 5 files, maybe it is now. I actually think they've become more lenient on us. I think they should stick to it. I think they've become more lenient, but back then it was like, did you make your 100 contacts? Prove it. Show me names, show me notes, show me, right? And if you didn't do it, you were getting a foul. You got 4 or 5 fouls, you did not graduate from Bold. I didn't graduate from college, 3.5 credits short, so that was the last time I was willing to let that be the case.
And it's interesting, right? Because you have a lot of people that don't like that accountability, right? They're like, oh, well, I'm not doing it, right?
I don't like it either.
Exactly, but
But what do you want in life, right? Do you want to? There's always this. Somebody always asks this question, right? Like, being overweight and unhealthy is hard. Being in shape is hard. Which hard do you want? Having money, right, and creating a business and having these responsibilities is hard. Being broke is hard. Which hard do you want? Right? And so, which one are you after? And I was right then. I mean, I watched my dad lose his job. So at 12 years old, it was ingrained into me. And I never forgot that, right? I'm 44 years old, and I think about that pretty regularly. When I don't want to do something, I think about, well, you could be at the mercy of somebody else telling you. When I was in Bold, the first time, we had this little farmhouse that we rented. Such a deal. I think it was $800 a month. I had like 5 acres, detached garages, and like it was awesome. I should have just stayed there forever, right? It's cheaper, but I should have just bought other houses and had other people rent them. And I could have just stayed. But so we had oil heat. I didn't know what oil heat was. I had never had it in Western Pennsylvania. It wasn't a big option, and I just thought you paid your bill and your heat stayed on. That's not the way oil works. You call the oil company and you have your tank filled. So I came home from a Bold, like step 3. I'm super excited. I just had this day of learning, right? I'm starting to feel some momentum. I think, I'm excited about what the future is. And I get home and we have no heat. We have a new baby. And it's winter and it's cold. We plugged space heaters in the bedroom that night. Kept the baby in the bedroom, kept Parker in the bedroom with us. I've only told this story one other time in my life. I told it in a boardroom. I cried while telling it. But I sat there and said, what happened? And then oil at the time was at like $6.25 a gallon. 500-gallon minimum to get a delivery. $625. I didn't have $625 extra dollars laying around, right? Like that. We didn't have that. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? So I had to figure that out. And I had to figure that out quickly. And I leaned on being resourceful, right? I leaned on figuring out, like, all right, how are we going to solve this problem? But I said from that day forward, this will never happen. This will never be our scenario. This will never, like, this is, And so when your big why becomes keeping your baby warm, you'll do anything. Having 20 conversations a day, having people hang up on me, that didn't matter. Because I detached myself from it. I knew the statistics. I tracked every dial, I tracked every conversation, tracked every appointment. From that led to 17 conversations, 7 appointments. So 4 dials for 1 conversation, 17 conversations to set an appointment. I didn't care that Tatiana said, shut up, don't call me. Didn't matter. Move on to the next one. Great, next. Right? Because the math doesn't lie over time. And so I just knew this is the activity I have.
You knew you needed 17 no's. Yes.
Yeah. And the faster we get there, the more money we're, right? More opportunities. Absolutely.
So you talked a lot about foundation, you talked a lot about your processes. So as real estate evolves, right, there's a big emphasis on AI, there's a big emphasis on social media. What does that look like in your business now?
Challenging, right? So this is where the stress, this is where it never ends, right? You either grow or you don't. And so, last Thursday, when was that? When I have my meltdown? Last Thursday, right? Like, left a meeting with Matt Madden, left a coaching call with my coach, and then was like 30 things in my head, all going around like a tornado. Wednesday, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop it, and so I like had a bouncy ball in our office, throwing it off the wall. I'm like, we start whiteboarding, right? We start just like, I got to dump all of this out of my head, and then I have to figure out what's the direction I head. So AI, social media, different marketing tactics, all of these, while yes, are changing the way we do business, I can't do them all at once. So it's purposeful about what are we doing right. What is the one that we're going to lean on and become very, very good at before we move on to something else. So I leverage AI not to the full ability of it, but it's also know that it's not my rock, right? It's not right. Social media right now is in our rock. And so I can't say we're going to do social media and we're going to do open houses at a high level. We're going to utilize AI and we're going to touch our sphere and our database and we're going to farm this neighborhood. That goes back to doing a bunch of things poorly. What does diluted focus gives diluted results, right? So if we have 10 things we could be doing and we have 10 tokens, right, that we can put into that effort bucket, if we put 1 in each bucket, we didn't move anything. But if we stack 10 on 1, now we become experts at something that moves along. So when you hear, it's great to hear people talk and hear about what they did. That doesn't mean you should do it, right? You have to decide what's right in my business at this moment. And that takes time and effort. I would say I probably have operated below my what would be my word, right? Below my level, right? I've operated below my level forever, mostly because of diluted focus, right? Mostly because, so like when you grow, you start to grow your business, that doesn't mean that my business is the same here as it, right? My business has gone like this the entire time, but it hasn't gone like this. Right? And we hit those ceilings, and we talk about E to P in this business all the time, entrepreneurial to purposeful. And my coach just talked to me about this. He's like, yeah, you're just lucky that you have a high entrepreneurial threshold. Right? You've gotten away with being able to do more than most people off of just what your current level of entrepreneurial level is. But until we put systems and models and leverage into place is when we change this trajectory to this trajectory. And so, don't go do 20 things. Take those 20 things and spend the time to focus on your business. Michael knows this, right? The biggest reason behind that is I'm very good in my business. I can pick up the phone, I can create leads, I can create opportunities. But I have failed in very many ways on my business over the years that has slowed my growth down. So right now, a big part of my focus is on that business. It is taking the time, taking the 2 hours to whiteboard out ideas and figure out which one do I really want versus just reacting.
I think a great example of what you're talking about is even when you stepped out of the TL, right? Like the TL role, you were lead genning, recruiting agents, right?
Mm-hmm.
You stepped out of that TL role, and within literally 3 to 4 months, you had a deal under contract and closed, right? Like because you understood that the basis and the work that you have to put in has to happen. So you went right back to the phones. You did what you do best, right? And that's how you got your business back where you need to be.
Yeah, and I think and from that window to probably last year, 2024 was my biggest year ever. 2024 was my biggest year ever, and that was probably within a year and a half, 2 years most of leaving the TL role.
Yeah,
right.
I don't even know.
But what I learned, right? What I learned in the TL role was I had to coach and teach people how to put the proper system in place. I had to be the doctor to diagnose their problem and give them the formula of how to get there. And what I realized, while I was capable of teaching all of that, I wasn't practicing what I was teaching. And so when I came back into running the sales team and wanting to grow this, I completely changed what that looked like. Right? Because I was like, okay, why? If you know what the right thing is, how many of you have a friend, a niece, a child that you give advice to that you don't listen to your same advice? It's real easy to diagnose somebody else's problem. It's very difficult to sit with that problem on your own chest and say, but what am I going to do? Because we just give ourselves an excuse. You got to get rid of the excuse, right? You got to get the excuse is gone because you know what's right. If I tell my kid that they should eat their vegetables and I'm eating fast food for lunch every day, am I practicing what I preach, right? And it's proven, right? It's simple to give. If you have a friend who has a problem in their life and they bring you that problem and you listen to them, you can diagnose to them how to help work them through it. And yet when that problem is our own problem, we let it weigh us down. And we cuddle up under a blanket and we say, I'm going to be comfortable. Right? I don't ever want to be comfortable. Right? Like every day I think, how can I be uncomfortable? My brother just made me ski things I am not comfortable skiing. Right? He's a way better skier than me. He's in way better shape than I'm in. He runs marathons. My legs were not prepared for the mountains that we skied this week. But I skied pretty good. I was happy with it, right? At the end of it, like, it's no different in my business, right? It's like, okay, I'm uncomfortable with this. Like, I think if it makes you uncomfortable, you should be like, yeah, let's go. Let's go do it. If you have a client, like, my role is if I get bad news and I got to call a client and get that other bad news, I am getting that bad news immediately. I am hanging up the phone from that bad news and I'm calling and getting it done. Because it still needs delivered 4 hours later, but it will ruin the next 4 hours. You will be stuck in this mindset.
Okay. What's working for you right now in your business? What's something that's just been very successful for you?
It's been a good start to the first quarter, and that's come from it's come from the basics, right? The basics exist even more in my business because I'm forced to work on the business as much as I am in the business because I'm responsible for stuff, right? So if I have to be, if I'm held accountable by her. She thinks that she's held accountable by me, but I'm held accountable by her. I am held accountable by how can I tell this person to go do these things if she doesn't see that representation of that done by me, right? If she doesn't say like, okay, Justin says to do this, but he's over here doing this. And there are times where that exists in our world, right? But we talk about that openly. Where like I've been in this business 13 years. There are certain things I'm going to do differently than her one business is going to do. because she's building that database I built 13 years ago, right? So there's different, but she does see me communicating to my database, right? She does see me adding to that database. Gary, my favorite thing Gary Keller said in the last 5 years was, as the market changed, somebody said, I guess we have to go back to the basics. And this is in his top 100 mastermind, where the poorest person in that room makes $3.5 million. And he said, whoever told you to leave it? Whoever told you to stop doing the basics? Success is simple, it's not easy, but it's boring. The quicker you realize it's boring, we want to be creative. We want to, right? But you could go create the best social media posts and 60 people like it, right? And 500 people view it. I mean, that's on average. You might have something go viral occasionally. You might get 1,000 views. You might get 15,000 views. But most of the time, right, it's this. And then if you don't do anything else, that's great. You have a great social media presence, but you're not creating opportunities. You got to talk to them, right? You can't wait for the phone to just ring. You have to be proactive in it. And it's boring. But the boring leads to the unreal life that's on your computer, right? It leads to the opportunities that you start to create. I told Stephanie this morning. This is harsh, and I've made people cry in coaching sessions. So it's
not me yet.
Not you yet. But like I'm pretty blunt, right? I'm going to be direct with you. And like if you want to accomplish something, I can help you do it, but I can't do it for you. And so if you look at it and people say, I'm like, oh, so why'd you get into real estate? They're like, I just really, it's not about money. I just really love people, and I really love showing houses, and I watch everything on HGTV. I'm like, oh, you do? You love all of those things. Why do you sell 4 to 6 houses a year? Because if you loved it and you really wanted to help people and you really love showing houses, you would go find as many people as you could to do that. So don't tell me you love it, because you're lying to yourself, right? You're lying to yourself. You are unwilling to get uncomfortable to create what you actually want. And if you actually believe in wanting to help a lot, by the way, I do not like looking at houses. I do not like showing houses. I don't care. I've seen a million of them, right? I'm past that. But I do love helping people. And so if I believe when I'm making those calls to my sphere and asking, who do you know that's looking to buy or sell a house? One mindset could be, that sounds salesy and I'm just asking for something. The other is, I know how many shitty agents there are. And if that person's going to buy or sell a house, I would rather help take care of their friend or family member, because I know I'm going to do a great job, versus them getting stuck with an agent. It's going to cost them money, cost them time, not accomplish their. So I am passionate about that. I do want to help people, but that means if I say that, then you better put yourself in front of a bunch of people.
Sure, President. All right. Any other words of insight or advice to give these guys, or anyone watching?
You're going to fail every single day. That's part of the growth, right? You can't grow without failing. So don't get attached to it. You're going to beat yourself up, right? Every day, thoughts come into my head that aren't good. Every day I have gotten to a point where, like, maybe not every day with this, but imposter syndrome sets in on everything. Am I capable of this? Am I the right person for this? What was I thinking that I thought I could do this? Right? That happens. You can't control that first thought, but you can control your second. So put yourself around people that encourage you and push you. And when somebody tells you you're crazy, that's okay. Forget that person. What do we say now is that you're not my audience.
You're not my audience.
You're not my audience. Your post was stupid. Don't care. You're not my audience. Right? Open houses don't work until you have 5 leads come out of this weekend. Right? Stephanie went through 3 or 4 where not one person was unrepresented. And this
None of them wanted to sign in. It was so frustrating.
And this weekend she got 5 leads. Unrepresented. She's had follow-up conversations with all of them, setting appointments, setting meetings. We just looked at her command today. From December when she started with me, when nobody was in there, we weren't tracking any of it, 15 opportunities are out there. Don't worry about, it's not about the outcome of any one thing, right? We're not in this business for today and tomorrow or even 3 months from now, right? I'm in this business for the long haul. And so if you tell me that you are going to move in 2 years, you're in my database and I'm going to follow up with you and I'm going to remind you of it and we're going to get closer and we're going to stay in touch and I'm going to be that person, right? We're going to constantly fill that funnel, and I'm not attached to the outcome of any one circumstance. Now, when you have one house pending, the inspection's about to ruin it. You thought you were 2 weeks away from a paycheck and now it's not coming. And believe me, I've been there. And now that's not coming. Guess what? How am I going to pay my bills now? But if you create enough opportunities that one deal falls apart, David Becker doesn't care if a deal falls apart. He moves on from it because he's got 10 more in the pipeline. Because the work exists. Doesn't matter what the outcome is. Just move on, right? Just keep doing the right things. Keep doing them over.
Guys, give him a round of applause. Anybody have any questions for him or any positive takeaways? We'll share.
I have a question. Beginning to mention market crash, I stayed down and lost a couple $1 million. And then your friend was very big on affirmations and positive mind. What did you do to keep yourself in that positive?
I mean, there was a window of hard, right? But we got into action to get past it, right? And this happens today, right? Are you ever anxious over all these things you have to do and you're kind of laying in bed in the morning and you're anxious about what your day's about to be because you know these 3 problems need handled and these follow-ups need to be made and there's a deadline that these buyers have to be and we have 8 offers in our inbox for a listing, right? So when I'm anxious about all of those things and I'm laying there, I know that the only way to get rid of that anxiety is to get action. So go get in action, right? Because momentum and movement will get rid of anxiety, right? I don't care if it's take a walk. Get yourself into action. When you're in that mindset, you're in that feeling, go get yourself into action and just start moving. So we got through it by having half a dozen beers after dinner, sitting at the table and thinking, how do we come up with a creative way to make some money? Which led to calling people in New Jersey that are being foreclosed on in Myrtle Beach, right? Take action on something. What's the one thing that I can do right now that can change my mindset or change the way I'm feeling? And so it's not, don't think that every agent, no matter what size their business is, doesn't have these problems. They're just different problems than yours, right? They're different problems every single day. And, it's like, well, my kid had this, so did mine, right? My spouse says this, so does mine, right? And then you gotta stay in action no matter what, do what's most important to accomplish it. We can ruin a whole day because of a fight, right? We can ruin a whole day because a deal fell apart. We can ruin a whole day because, yesterday I drove from Vermont back to Harrisburg and I spent, of my 6-hour drive, I probably spent 3 of it because I was purposeful about what I knew needed to be done. I went through it before I got in the car. I knew who my phone calls were. I had a little list. Stephanie interrupted it regularly.
I had so many questions.
Because Stephanie's starting to have stress and anxiety in her business, right? Because she's creating more opportunities than she's ever had. And so for that's stressful. That causes, right? And so she was like, calls me. She was just so excited. 5 minutes later, she calls me back and she's like, I have a problem. I'm like, okay, tell me about your problem. And I was like, great. You're going to call that client back and you're going to say, that's a great question. We have to make a few calls to get the right answer. Give us 48 hours. We'll be back. We did not need to solve that problem, but her thought, and rightfully so, where she's at in her business, she thought she had to figure out that problem right then. Now she's reacting to what everybody else needs. I'm reacting first to what I need, and then I can help everybody else. Otherwise, you'll never leave that anxiety. So write it down, whiteboard it out, clear your head. Look, I had a meltdown a week ago, right? Like I had a meltdown in our office a week ago. And like, that's gonna come because that's just like, and then I was like, okay, but I can't sit there and have a meltdown. I can give it 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then it's like, okay, what do we need to work through to get clarity behind what's causing the stress and anxiety? When you sell 2 houses a month, you will get comfortable with it, and then you'll sell 5 houses a month, and then and it'll be stressful, and then you'll get comfortable with it. And you'll get to 10. I remember the first time I had 10 things pending. I took a week vacation to Key West during that time too, which was not relaxing. But when you get to 10 for the first time, right, you get to that number, it's like driving your car 80 miles an hour when you're 16 years old on the highway. And you're like, holy shit, flying, right? I don't have control of this. And now, as an adult, you probably drive 80 miles per hour every time you're on an interstate. And if you don't, get out of the left lane, please. So right, like, you will become accustomed. You will catch up, but don't stay in it. Right? When you're like, I'm comfortable with this, because when you start selling 10 a month and you have 4 pending, it feels like you're going out of business. You're like, oh shit, there's nothing. There's not much, right? But 4 used to feel swamped. But the clarity behind that is, if 4 feels swamped, that means that you're probably reacting to what those 4 people need, and you're not creating new opportunities. And I will tell you, when I came back from that trip, and we did close those 10 deals it was May when I came home, June we closed those 10 deals, I probably didn't close anything else because I was reacting to all of these 10 deals and putting out fires and not taking 2 hours a day to make sure I could go. And then guess what happens? That feels even worse. Now you start over. Like, crap, I'm going to go create opportunities again.
Any other questions?
I really appreciated the clicker idea. I'm wondering now that you're.
You want one? I got one.
Actually, I would.
I
was wondering if maybe now you use them to count your golf strokes.
I give you one. Oh no, my golf strokes are low enough. I know them. I know. I can tell you every shot hit in a round. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Justin. I really appreciate it.
I do have a really dumb question though.
No dumb questions. Wow.
As a new agent, like, I am getting flooded with all of these, like, just trainings alone that are available.
Sure.
So how do we know? How can I clear out?
So here's what I would
know
say.
which ones to focus on and which ones not.
I would say write down every area of source of business that you think where you can get it from. Even if you don't want to do it, right? Like open houses, database calls, networking events, right? Expireds, for sale by owners. Write down all of these things. And then pick what 1 or 2 would I be passionate about focusing on. And then go to the trainings that revolve around those. Skip the others for now, because they'll come back. Right? You don't need to be in a training for how to create a newsletter to your farm when
You're not farming.
when you're not farming and it's not your point of business, right? So like, write down that list, read the one thing, right? Because if you read the one thing, it'll tell you how to take that list and focus it. And you can read the one thing in a weekend, like it's a simple short book. But take the philosophy behind what that is, make your list, rank it, break it down, and then figure out and then say, okay, for the next quarter, at the very least, this is what I'm focused on. And I will go to trainings revolving around this. But there's a lot of agents I've seen come in and out of this business, and they look busy,
It's like so many objects.
but they're never taking action, right? You can go to the trainings. Yeah, I mean, I remember door knocking when I was a new agent. I was like, hey, I'm going to go door knock this neighborhood. Does anybody want to come with me? Another agent, she said, yeah, I've been thinking about door knocking. She's been in business 5 years and never once done it. Yeah, great, I'll do it with you. I want to go do it with you. I'm like, great, what are we going to hand out? I bet 7 minutes later, I had a flyer to hand out. And 3 weeks later, she didn't knock on a door. Because she spent all her time worried about what's this thing look like. I'm like, who cares what it looks like? If it has my name and phone number on it, like that's all that matters. By the way, 95% of them are going to throw this out as soon as they walk back in their house. So it doesn't matter, right? All that was a comfort blanket for me when knocking on a door that feel like I had something. That was my value add. right? But the purpose of it was really just the conversation.
We get so overcome with what does it look like, or how does it look, or just, is this okay, or I need something, right? That we never actually get to the actual function of what we need to do, which in his scenario is actually going out and knocking on doors, and we see it all the time.
Tell me about my spelling mistake. Great, that means you read it. Right? Like, that means you read it. Congratulations, I don't care, I misspelled it. Don't care, right? And so it's like just do it. Get out of planning, get into action as fast. It doesn't mean you don't plan, but get out of planning and get into action.
I think for you, the other thing is I see this a lot as the new agents come into business. I just met with one yesterday, and they come into the business and they have the same issue. Bright, shiny object, right? There's this training, there's that thing over here. They get a call from Realtor.com. They have this happening over here. They're like, where do I focus, right? The reality is that you need to at least have a basic business plan developed for yourself, right? Like, you just need to understand, what is my goal? What is Justin?
If you're clear
Justin
about your
talked about
goal,
his
you know what
why.
to say no to.
Yes.
Right? If you're clear about what your goal is and what you're focused on and what you're working on, you know what to say no to. And you can do it respectfully. You can say, yeah, you know what, now's just not the time for me to be involved in that. I appreciate it. Maybe in the future I would be interested.
Yeah, and ask yourself, how is this going to get me to my goal, right? There's a simple calculator. I just did a video on it. Thursday, you'll get my email, but it's the LID calculators, lifestyle investment debt. And literally, it's just putting how much money that you want to make and how much money that you need to make, right? And it's going to boil it down to how many conversations you have a day. And that's a great way just to get basic clarity on, okay, I know that in order to make what I want to make, do what I want to do, live the lifestyle I want, I need to have 10 conversations a day, right?
Gene Rivers has a great video that goes along with that calculator too. It's like 15 minutes of him teaching.
Yeah, mine's like 6 or 7 minutes, I think, yeah. But yeah, so. Anything else?
When you were lead genning.
What's your name?
Jandel.
Jandel, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, bro. When you were lead genning and you had that one perfect script, what made you realize that you need to change it?
So I have practiced, I would say probably more scripts than maybe Aaron Mayersky is the only one that's practiced scripts as much as I have in this business at that point in my career. And so, hi Aaron. So what practicing scripts led to was internalizing them. And they became my normal dial. So I can have that, you can sit down right now and role play something, and I'll just be able to role play it, right? Because I've internalized it over time. But the way I always looked at scripts was, the best thing you can do in any conversation is ask questions. So it became this bullet point of questions that would move the conversation along if I ever got stuck. So only through time and repetition did I figure out what my best opening line was. Right? And then from that, because I would get better responses. So if I've talked to 5 people, I've started them off the same way, and I'm getting the same dismissal response, I had to change how I opened that conversation. So for sale by owners, for example, which I started to build my business off of, my first, hey Michael, this is Justin Lapiska with Keller Realty. I saw you have your home for sale at 123 Main Street. Let me ask you a question. When your home sells, where are you moving to? Everybody else called them and asked them, can I come, if I have a buyer, would you pay me? Right? They asked all these questions about the sale of their house. I just said, when your home sells, where are you moving to? Some would say, what do you care? Well, every single day, I proactively prospect to find buyers for my listings. That's what you would want an agent to do for you if you hired one, right? They're like, oh yeah, I guess so. I'm like, great, so where are you moving to? And then I would get the appointment through saying, great, look, I'd love to come to buy, take a look at your house, see if we do have any buyers that have a for it. Have a little bit further conversation about what you're looking for as well. Now I would get them on a home search. Now they would start missing opportunities to buy houses because their home hasn't sold. I got their listings because they couldn't buy, right? I created a different angle than the 10 other agents calling them, asking them the same opening question of, hey, if I were to bring a buyer, if I had a buyer that was interested in your home, are you willing to pay a commission? Or how did you decide to go for sale by owner instead of list with an agent? Right? I can get into those conversations eventually, right? I can ask those questions, but it wasn't the best way for me to build trust and have them open up and start a conversation. So is there failure all along that way? 100%. You'll go fail and fail and fail, but what you'll learn is my conversations, because I have options with enough script practice, I could restructure it to how's it best start.
Any other questions? Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.